Hello! We are back again in English for a new episode of Parole de métaleux. Parole de métaleux on Radio Cause Commune 93.1 FM Paris. And this evening, I'm proud to have a cool group, a cool band. Sorry, I mix English and French now. Ninkharsag. Hello, Kyle. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm very proud to have Kyle this evening. He's from Liverpool. We have some technical difficulties, but finally he's here. Ninkharsag is English black death metal, and the last album make a good buzz because the album is really powerful and really enjoyable. The name is The Dread March of Solemn God, and something in April 2021 it was released. Are we okay about that, Kyle?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, the first question, Kyle. When was founded Ninkharsag?
So it was founded in 2009 by our other guitarist, Paul, who had started to compose some tracks. And then we met on a separate tour, and he played me some of the material he was working on at the time. And I also had some of my own material. So eventually we just got together and started to write music together. But yeah, so we both had quite a wealth of material before we even started the band. So some of these songs are quite old, going back fucking early 2000s. So it's finally coming out now. It's taken a while.
And so, what is your main influence?
So main influence, so obviously like Bathory, King Diamond, Emperor, all Metallica and Megadeth, stuff like that. Dissection, obviously, Mayhem. All the classic bands, really. We're not really interested in, more contemporary bands. I couldn't really tell you much about the modern metal scene, to be honest with you.
Yes, and about English metal scene, with Cradle of Filth, for instance. Do you like them?
Yeah, we like their old first few albums. Because when we started getting into black metal in the late 90s, those bands hadn't fully turned shit. So it was, they were still like remotely somewhat credible in the scheme of things, but maybe not so much now.
What is your role exactly in the band, Kyle? And can you present you? I forgot this simple question.
So I'm the singer. I'm one of the guitar players. So I write all the lyrics, and I also write some of the material as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, me and Paul, or the guitarist, we both write the material. The first album was mainly his material, whereas the second album, our new album, The Dread March of Solemn Gods, we both contributed a bit more, so it's a bit more even. And I also just take care of general band business as well. So that keeps me really busy at the moment, which is good.
So, if I sum up, you are the frontman of Ninkharsag.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for being a frontman, what is your background as musician?
So, I've been playing in bands since I was 16, so it's going back for a long time now. Almost, 21 years. So, been quite a long time. Although it probably should be better for the amount of time that I've been playing. But I never really set out to be the frontman. It just sort of fell into place, really. I could just sing and play guitar at the same time, and that was it, really.
So, as a frontman, are you a good friend or a tyrant in the band?
I'm a good friend. We do get on really well in this band. There's not really much of an ego as such. We all try and get our own ideas across. And then we'll eventually just put them forward into what will work for the band. But sometimes it helps to have someone who's a bit more focused to really push certain ideas forward. So that's generally me as well. Because otherwise things might not get done or get done at a slower pace. So these days I'm just trying to push things as far as I can. So
who was receive your first album?
Quite well, although we didn't really tour much from it, and it was a bit of an odd time for the band, really. By the time the album had come out, things were sort of like slowing down a lot more, because we'd spent quite a few years working on it and getting it ready, and then various things presented themselves, and it just took a while for, the momentum to carry on. So we just focused on the next album, which is where we are now.
First album, the name is The Blood of Celestial King. A few years later, you make The Dread March of Solemn God, so in 2021, and I think it was better received than the first one.
Yeah.
What have you improved for the second album?
Well, I think the songwriting is a lot tighter. It's more focused. So, sonically, it's a lot better. We went to a really good studio. We worked with Chris Fielding, who's an amazing engineer, and he's worked with like Primordial, Kona, and Winter Philith, Electric Wizard, loads of like big British bands. So he knew exactly what we wanted, and we mixed the album twice as well. So we made sure that we got it sounding how we wanted it to. Whereas the first album was just like a bit of a rush job, because the first album isn't technically an album anyway. It's just a EP, really. It was never really intended to be an album. The only reason we called it an album was because when Candlelight said they wanted to release it, we decided to just, push it forward, but we were never really happy with the album as a whole. It was just like a collection of demos and stuff which we recorded and then just released. Whereas some of the songs on this new album we had already written before the first album was released as well, but we didn't want to release them on that album. We thought we'd best to save them for the next album, which we knew would be a lot better.
I think, from my point of view, the second album is really better than the first one. The sound, like you said, it's really powerful. It's like a Panzer, really. It's really massive sound.
Yeah, well, we went for like a big sort of 80s sounding drums and reverb on the guitars, and we just wanted it to sound like a lost 80s, early 90s album. So I feel like we tried to pull out all those old stops, really, like all the reverb and delay on the guitars and the drums. We spent a while getting the drum sound. We wanted the snare to sound massive, and the big fucking Tommy Lee snare or something like that, to get the, no fucking about. We wanted it to sound like an 80s drum kit. So spent a while getting that. So whereas the first album sounds quite dry and a bit flat. So
yes, a bit flat, the first one. The compositions are good, but yes, the sound is flat. Yeah. That's a good comparison. We have a stupid joke in French. It's flat like Samantha Fox. I don't know if you have the same joke in England.
No, we don't have that one.
It's a really stupid joke. For the French auditor, Kyle, now we will listen some song from your second album, The Dread March of Solemn God. Which song can we hear together? Give me a title.
How about Under the Dead of Night?
Cause commune 93.1 FM Paris. Et ce soir, je suis avec Ninkharsag. Kyle, are you still here? Are you okay?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah. Are you accepting the comparison with dissection?
Well, I think it's more of a case of we really like the sort of, like I said, the 80s and early 90s aesthetic music and bands and things. So for us, it was a case of just trying to write an album that had a similar sort of blueprint to the sort of more melodic Swedish bands from the 90s, like Dissection, Sacramentum, Dawn, bands like that, really. So for us, we just wanted to write a continuation of that period. So the bands that were influencing those sort of bands, like, you know, Bathory, Iron Maiden, Solemn, all that stuff, Metallica, are the bands that influence us as well. So I guess it was just a case of us just writing material, and it just sort of turned out this way. We never set out to just think, okay, we'll write, you know, an album that sounds like Dissection. It was just sort of, that's how the material just came around. Although the cover, obviously we're going for that classic blue Necrolord style, which was intentional.
Yes, because yes, it was my next question. Necrolord make the Somberline cover.
Yeah,
we are okay. You have some influence with King Diamond.
yeah,
We remember everyone remember Abigail.
of course.
Yes.
So,
with blue color and
yeah,
the Solemn God, your last album, the Dwayne March of Solemn God, sorry, is also blue. We saw Horseman with some, it's not horses, it's like a ghoul, I think.
yeah.
But your inspiration of the cover, yeah, there is a blue, there is a Necrolord. What do you think about this deep blue? What is the feeling inside you with this blue from the 80s?
To me, it just represents like that classic feeling you get when you listen to a really good old album. You know you're going to get a good fucking solid metal album when it has a blue cover. So, like I was saying about, you know, King Diamond, Abigail, and yeah, even Ride the Lightning, things like that. Just, I suppose it's like a nostalgic feeling when you see like a blue metal cover. So we really wanted to have that on this album. Just because, like I said earlier, it's the influences on this album are very much like the 80s and early 90s. So we wanted to try and tie it into that mind frame where you see a cover and you know exactly what sort of album you're going to get. I mean, we could have had anything on the cover. Could have been fucking anything, but we chose to try and make it look as old school as possible.
So, are you old school? Are you an old school guy in your life?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, very. I don't really listen to modern bands, to be honest with you.
Oh,
I couldn't really tell you who's doing what, or you know. I just, even old bands that are still going, most of them haven't released anything worth listening to in 20, 30 years. So I don't know. I'm very stuck in that old mind frame.
what is the evolution of the band between your two albums? Because you change the label between the two albums. So, actually, you are with Vendetta Records, but before you were with Candlelight Records. So, for the auditor, Candlelight Records, it's, in French, 1349, but it's also Arcturus, Analnacrat, Bluetooth Nord.
Yeah.
So, what's happened? It was a bad label, or do you have some other plan in mind?
Well, when we signed to Candlelight, it was just for it was one album release deal. So we gave them the first album, and like I said earlier, we never really managed to get much further than releasing the album due to various things. So we decided to just focus on writing the next album. But Vendetta had been in touch with us for a couple of years about releasing the next album anyway. So, and with Candlelight being owned by Spine Farm these days and Sony, it's easy for a small band to get lost in the big picture. You know, because obviously they've got so many big bands on there that make loads of money for them. Smaller bands, it's harder to get your foot through the door when obviously, you know, they need to keep making money from the bands that are a lot bigger than us. So we decided to go with Vendetta for this album because it meant that we can sort of build ourselves back up through the underground a bit more. Whereas I felt when we were on Candlelight, it was a bit too much too soon. Whereas now that we're on Vendetta, we can be more focused with, you know, trying to really like play the field a bit more and, you know, try and build up some sort of underground buzz rather than being on a big label, which sometimes means you get overlooked in the underground, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, we want to work with Vendetta for a couple of releases and then see how things go. But so far, they've been amazing. Stefan, who runs Vendetta, has been completely like open, and whenever we've needed something, he's helped us out. And yeah, it's just really easy to work with. So we're really happy with the decision we've made.
So it's a bit paradox. So if I understand well, Vendetta Records, it's more old school mind, in fact.
Yeah, it's very open, very easy to deal with. And we actually own all the rights to the music as well, which is good. Whereas the first album, we don't. So this new album, you know, we published it ourselves.
I don't think you are a little band because the first time I heard Ninkharsag, it was the beginning of this year, and all my friends around me said to me, "Hey, listen this fucking album, listen this fucking album." It's a sign of a good band, generally, Kyle. You know that?
Yeah, but we're really happy with the album and the reception. But we still want to be able to, you know, like I said, build up a bit more buzz on the underground. And because we own the rights to the music, it means that we can promote it in different ways, which you couldn't do being on Candlelight. For example, we've put the album on the Black Metal Promotion channel on YouTube, and it's had 85,000 views so far since April.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is more than it's more than our first album has ever had.
Yeah.
In the whole time it's been out. So just simple things like that really increase, you know, the listening field and who's actually getting to hear the album. I mean, YouTube these days is obviously like such a big deal for bands. So the fact that we've been able to we can put our new album on there and it gets more views and listens than anything that we've ever put out before in a few months speaks volumes, really. You know, it's the future, is being able to, you know, go onto YouTube and listen to new bands every day. Not that I do that, but I know a lot of people do. So it's a case of it's clearly working. So yeah, so I was totally happy with the decision we've made using a smaller label, and I feel like it will pay off in the long run. So,
what is your creative process for music, for lyrics? Generally, are you jamming a lot with your band, or each one compose in his house, and sometimes maybe in a remote way on camera, because we lived in the lockdown, in post-apocalypse life now with fucking COVID. Do you? Yeah, tell me.
Well, we generally compose ideas ourselves, and like I said, it's mainly myself and our other guitarist, Paul, who writes all the music. You know, the main melodies and song structures and things. But we're also very open to ideas and suggestions from everybody in the band, or if somebody turns up with a piece of music or drum pattern or bass line or whatever, you know, we'll take it on board. So it's very much just whatever material is working best at the time. So, I mean, I've generally have like a small setup at home where I write all my ideas and riffs and things. Lyrics and things, I try and write them or get ideas for them at least while I'm out walking or traveling, which I tried to do quite a bit before COVID anyway. So some of the lyrics for the new album were actually written in like Transylvania and in the catacombs in Malta, places like that. So I try and draw a bit of inspiration from wherever I am. Because generally when we go abroad, I try and go to visit a lot of old religious sites and cemeteries and things. And I always try and put together some sort of lyrics from those places just to make them come back to life for me anyway. You know, because I spend a lot of time in like historical places as well. So trying to tap into that old energy and, you know, utilize that influence on my music.
About cemetery and Transylvania, I don't know on the map where is Liverpool exactly, sorry. But in London, around London, Bram Stoker make a lot of description of a fright cemetery, and there is a lot of legend about vampire in UK cemetery generally. More in UK than in France or Belgium or Switzerland.
Yeah.
You have a speciality in England for vampire and cemetery generally.
Yeah, there's a lot of old Gothic tales here as well. But I don't actually live in Liverpool anymore. I live in the northwest, in the mountains, in Cumbria, which is close to Scotland. So up here there's mountains and caves and lakes and forests, Roman ruins, cemeteries like on mountainsides, which you can't even really get to. So for me, there's quite a lot of influence just when I walk out my front door. I actually live quite near an old castle ruin. So I can walk up there in 10 minutes, and at night sometimes take some beers, candles, some fucking old battery and take it up to the castle, you know. So it's just being able to tap into the places that are nearby and, you know, try and draw some inspiration from them.
Near Scotland, there is a lot of mythology of fairies generally.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of old Celtic sites as well, old stone circles in Scotland.
Yes, in Scotland.
Stand-in stones.
I think it's a wonderful place. One day I hope to go in Scotland, really.
Yeah.
So now we will listen the eponym song, Ninkharsag, and after Kyle, explain us this song, okay?
Okay.
Let's go.
93.1 FM.
Cause commune 93.1 FM, and we are back in English tonight with black death metal with Ninkharsag, a fucking good album, so you must listen it. Cheers. Kyle, so we listen the eponym song, Ninkharsag. Can you explain the quintessence, the deepest feeling of Ninkharsag?
Well, for me, it's very much it's almost like the band these days is almost like a spiritual thing for me now. It's very much like the focal point of everything that I'm trying to do with my life. So it takes up so much time and effort, and especially when we want to push it further. Whereas the song you just played deals with the theory of Ninkharsag and Enki being part of the Anunnaki race who came to Earth to create man as a slave. So the lyrics generally explore that concept and how they basically created man in their image, but to basically mine for gold and minerals and things to help their race. So that was the idea behind that song.
Generally, sorry. Your lyrics seems to talk about ancient history, magic, war, occultism. So you make a little teaser because you are in Scotland with the fog, a ghost in the fog, like a Cradle of Filth song, of course. Did you experiment in some way occultism?
Well, I generally try and keep my spiritual sort of practices quite personal to me, because it's I'd rather the listener take what they need from the lyrics rather than me trying to explain the concept too much, because I feel like it sort of devalues your own experience in a way. For me, I like to listen to an album and think of the lyrics and then interpret them in a meaning way that makes sense to me at the time. So some of my favorite albums, when I listen to them like 20, 30 years later, I still get that same feeling and the same thought process that I got when I first heard them. And a lot of those albums don't really explain the lyrics too much. They just sort of let you interpret them how you want. And to me, that is always how I've tried to write my lyrics, especially on this new album. The first album is very much reads like sort of different histories about various concepts or whatever. But this new album, lyrically, is a lot more personal. So, yeah, I'd rather the listener interpret them how they want, rather than me explaining too much.
On the first album, your mindset was more about Aleister Crowley. I know on some interview he influenced you a lot on the first album. Is it right?
That's correct, yeah. So at the time, I was very much into Crowley, and I was meditation and a lot of experimental going on, so it was, it crept into the music a lot more then. Whereas these days, like I said, I'd rather the lyrics are very much more open to interpretation. rather than the first album, which, like I said, deals with a lot of more straightforward concepts, and lyrically it's quite open and easy to follow. But yeah, this new album is very much more personal and a bit more for the listener to engage with, rather than me just dictating a certain story or a certain concept to them. But yeah, I managed to go up to Crowley's old house on Boleskine, on the shores of Loch Ness.
Oh.
About 10 years ago. It's still a privately owned house, but managed to sneak up to it. Got some photos. But now it's burned to the ground. And it's in the process of being rebuilt.
It was a Friday experience?
Well, it was quite surreal because it's such a remote and quiet place. Even though it's, on the banks of Loch Ness, it was actually in the middle of autumn, in the morning, quite early. So there was no one around. So some friends and I, we snuck up to it. Had a little look. But yeah, it was definitely an odd vibe about the place.
If I remember well, this house was by Jimmy Page.
Yeah, Jimmy Page used to live there. Yeah.
Yes, and Crowley getting mad one day because he made some invocation in this house, and after he was in asylum a few months. That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he went mad. I think it was a long ritual that he was performing, and I don't think he finished it. I think it was just too much for him.
Yes, a friend of me told me one day the importance of ritual. It's not the decorium; it's the intention, because you can make some ritual with your breakfast. But if you have intention, if you have the true intention to pass away the door, you will win. What do you think?
Yes, it's very much like a lot of focus needs to be, obtained before you can really sort of commit to it, I think. It's very much a personal process, which is why I generally don't subscribe too much to predetermined, orders or whatever. It's very much a personal journey, and I feel like when people have to talk about it too much, they're trying to overcompensate for something else. Which is why, like I said, I generally try and keep my own spiritual beliefs quite close to my heart, rather than putting it out there and saying, oh, I'm this, I'm that. Because generally, the ones who fucking scream loudest about it are the ones who don't have much to say. If you know what I mean. Like, anyone can dress up, anyone can fucking, wear pentagrams, everyone can do whatever. These days, it's so easy for people to just fucking dress around and pose as whatever, but for me, I'd rather just do my thing and then let people interpret how they want.
If I understand, you have your personal beliefs about some mix, maybe in misanthropic Luciferian order, maybe in primordial chaos, maybe in some antique gnosis, and you make a syncretism, you make a mix. That's right.
Yeah, there's definitely influence from all those things. But like I said, it's generally more of a... I'm open to various ideas rather than being locked into a certain, specific order or, concept. I feel like, there's just things to be learned from everything. So you just best keep an open mind, picking up what you need.
But in your black metal, do you have some anti-Christianism point of view or nothing?
Well, I'm very much anti-organized religion. So that goes for all the religions. And not because they don't have some interesting concepts, it's more because of the way they use that power to control and deceive people. So I feel like it's a case of the blind leading the blind now. You've got, all these fucking rich churches and things, and they just don't know the truth. They don't know what ultimately will happen after death. But for some reason, they still have this much fucking power over people. And to me, it's just mind-boggling these days that it's allowed to stand. That people still put up with it. So I feel like the whole fucking thing should be like washed away. But it's just too entrenched in modern society, isn't it? Or just societies in general for the past fucking 2,000 years. So how do you wipe away that? It's just ingrained in mankind now. The only thing that would fucking sort of erase religion would be some sort of fucking, planetary disaster, which I think we're all praying for anyway. So the sooner the better. Start again from fresh. I'm very misanthropic anyway, but I also have that sort of like spark that thinks that, there's something ultimately powerful about man and the place in the universe, but I'd also like to see the whole fucking thing reduced to ash and start again. So, it's, there you go, some of my, sort of my personal beliefs are cropping up, but yeah, it's generally, there's power here, which we can't unlock in the current bodies that we have, or the current fucking laws of physics just completely like hold us down. So, yeah, there you go. Eventually, something will crack. The fabric of the universe. Things might reset back to something, we can actually work with. But
Do
we'll
you
see.
think there is a great architect like Rosicrucian way or Freemason?
Well, I think it's possible, but it's at the end of the day, you can meditate on these things, and you can have fucking mind-altering experiences on drugs, and supposedly see the creator and see fucking spiritual beings and various entities and whatnot. But I don't know. It's hard to ultimately commit to something. It's pure faith, just being able to say, okay, I believe this. Because we all know the human mind is also capable of deception. You can believe something and be so fucking completely like hell-bent on it being true. But then someone else believes something else, and when they're hell-bent on that as well, how can you separate the truth from the lie?
That's a complicated question.
So, but yeah, I generally, I believe it's possible. And if it is possible, then we've been enslaved by them, because we don't have the freedom, do we, to just fucking explore the universe. We're trapped in a tiny little piece of it.
Kyle, you are old school guy, okay, but do you have a point of view on the metal scene in 2021? And we have around 10 minutes of show still remaining. Sorry.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, I don't generally keep on top of like what bands are doing anything these days, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. In fact, the whole band are in pretty much a similar situation where you won't really get much of a response from them. But I can't even remember the last time I listened to a new album, to be honest with you. So I'm probably best skipping the question.
Okay, skipping the question. Fuck that question. Yeah, 2021 on YouTube, you can find some Ninkharsag bootleg on this year from your last show, and it's kick ass. It's really cool. So go on YouTube, watch Ninkharsag. Next question. So on old school, really on old school, you talk about Battery, King Diamond, Emperor, etc. But exit these bands, okay? What is your favorite album on the last 2 decades? In the more controversial band or more no band?
Well, see, this is it's still a tough one because the last fucking good albums came out in like the late 90s. No, I do like the Nedrosian black metal scene. There's some really good bands coming from Trondheim. Have you listened to the Mara album, The Ebony Tower? That's pretty good. That's a really good album. And other than that, I can't even think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that came out 3-4 years ago now. But it was a long time coming. I was looking forward to that one for a while. So that was good. And then, yeah, I can't... Honestly, my mind is blank.
And do you know some French black metal bands or French death metal band?
Only the old classic, like Mutilation and stuff like that.
Anorexia nervosa, do you know that?
The which, sorry?
Anorexia nervosa.
Sorry, I can't...
Anorexia nervosa, something like that.
No, I don't know that.
Oh. So maybe you must listen. It was the golden age of symphonic black metal with the same period as the first one, Dimmu Borgir.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was really cool. And do you know the French Légion Noire? It's a Black Legion with yeah, you know that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some really good bands then as well.
Yes, and for your next album, there is a very old song on mutilation. The song called, the name of the song is Transylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Maybe write it on your paper and listen it after the show. I think you will like that. It's really raw black metal and with harsh noise voice. It's really from the deep of hell. It's really cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good. So, you are in Scotland. Maybe you don't have electricity, I don't know. But what is the ultimate album for you that you never give to someone, that you give in your heart, that you will listen in 20 years?
Probably quite a long list, but yeah.
One.
One. Oh, fuck. Oh, jeez. Okay, now. Probably Emperor in the Nightside Eclipse.
Oh, it's a good choice.
Yeah, only because for me, it just sums up like all the what I still want black metal to be now. You know, really fucking massive sounding, majestic, cold, evil, dark, you know, and it's just nobody has ever released an album close to it after all these years in that sort of, you know, symphonic, although I hate to even call it that because it doesn't really feel like a symphonic black metal album. You know, most symphonic black metal albums just sound like total shit. You know, they don't have the same atmosphere, the same sort of murky guitar tones and massive drums, and it sounded like it was recorded in a fucking ruined monastery on top of a mountain.
Yeah.
Most melodic and symphonic black metal albums just sound like really fucking flat and tinny, and I don't know, it's just not the same. So for me, that would be the ultimate. And, you know, it was one of the first black metal albums I ever heard, so it's always stuck with me all these years. You know, it's like the ultimate blueprint to a perfect black metal album.
Yes, and blueprint perfect album. You have around 1 minute and 30 seconds, Kyle.
Okay.
Do you have something to say to French auditor?
Yeah, we want to try and get to France and play very soon, once all the fucking COVID bullshit is finished. So we're working on a European tour for next year, hopefully in May. So hopefully we get to Paris at some point.
Cool. And do you go to Switzerland? Because I'm a French guy living in Switzerland, in fact.
Well, hopefully.
Oh, really?
We're just working on the tour planning right now. In fact, I've just seen an email from the promoter. So hopefully we can try and get something penciled in for next May.
Oh, yeah. Fuck shit.
So,
Thank you, Carl.
Okay, thank you for having me.
I hope you got a good moment. It was really cool for me. Ninkharsag was for me one of the best albums in 2021. So thank you, Guy.
All right, thank you very much.
So see you. Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.